The sound hit me first. Cardboard scraping against metal, plastic rustling, low voices murmuring instructions. I stood frozen in the doorway, watching three men in gray uniforms methodically emptying what had once been my office. One man balanced my Crystal Research Award, the one I'd received just last year for pioneering biological containment protocols, atop a pile of trash bags. "Careful with that," another worker cautioned. "It looks expensive." "Doesn't matter," replied a third, shoving my research binders into industrial-sized waste bags. "Everything goes." My knees nearly buckled. 6 weeks of radiation therapy had left me more fragile than I'd anticipated. I gripped the doorframe, my hospital wristband still intact from my final treatment that morning. "What's happening here?" The question escaped as barely more than a whisper. The workers startled, turning toward me with widening eyes. One dropped the binder he was holding. "Ma'am, we're just following orders," the nearest one said, avoiding my gaze. Heavy footsteps approached from behind. "Mirren, you weren't supposed to return until next Monday." Elias, the supervisor of environmental safety, appeared beside me, his expression flickering between surprise and something darker. "My doctor cleared me early." I watched as they continued dismantling 15 years of my professional life. My diplomas had been stripped from the walls. The cabinet where I'd stored research samples was emptied. My personal belongings, including the photo of my sister and me at the summit of Mount Rainier, were nowhere to be seen. "Where are my research files? The containment protocol drafts?" My voice strengthened with growing alarm. Elias shifted uncomfortably. "There's been a reorganization while you were away. Your position is being integrated into general operations." Integrated? The word felt like gravel in my mouth. "You should speak with HR. Vega can explain everything. I have a presentation to prepare for tomorrow." Without another word, he strode away, leaving me amid the dismantling of my career. 20 minutes later, I sat across from Vega, the head of human resources. She tapped at her tablet, not bothering to look up when I entered. "We needed the space," she said flatly, finally meeting my eyes. "The Biological Safety Committee is being restructured. Your position no longer exists as an independent entity." "I built that department from nothing," I said, leaning forward. "I wrote the protocols that earned us Level 4 certification after the disaster at the sister facility." She slid a folder toward me. "Your contributions have been acknowledged in your severance package." "Severance?" The room seemed to tilt. "I'm being terminated?" "Technically, your role has been absorbed. We're offering 6 months' salary, which is quite generous considering the circumstances." "What circumstances?" Vega's expression remained neutral. "The committee determined that maintaining a separate biological containment division wasn't cost-effective. The new integrated approach will streamline operations." I left her office in a daze, clutching the severance papers. Walking back through the research wing, I passed the main conference room, where Elias stood before a projection screen, surrounded by nodding department heads. "Presenting my new containment protocols to the federal inspection team tomorrow." His voice drifted through the partially open door. "These innovative approaches will revolutionize how we handle potential outbreaks nationwide." I stopped breathing. Those were my protocols, my research, my life's work. For a decade, I'd developed those systems after the cross-contamination incident that killed 2 lab technicians at our sister facility. I'd testified before Congress. I'd rebuilt public trust in our institution when we nearly lost our accreditation. And now, while I recovered from cancer, they were erasing me. In the parking lot, I sat in my car watching staff carry more of my belongings to the dumpster. My hands trembled as I scrolled through my contacts. Not my lawyer, not the press. I needed someone with immediate impact. I called the direct line of Undersecretary Talia Winters, the woman whose brother had been one of those technicians who died, the woman who had personally recruited me to redesign the nation's lab safety standards, the woman whose team was arriving tomorrow for their inspection. "They're implementing untested protocols," I told her, trying to keep my voice steady. "They've dismantled my entire containment strategy and are presenting it as new work without the safety redundancies." Her response was immediate. "I'm at the regional office, 2 buildings over. Don't move." Before we continue further, thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. If you're enjoying it so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories like this one. Your support means everything to me, and I read every single comment. Now, let's get back to what happened next. My name is Mirren Ashcroft, Before I became the pariah of the nation's most prestigious biological research institute, I was their star scientist. The woman who rebuilt safety protocols after the Meridian Lab disaster claimed 3 lives, including Undersecretary Winter's brother. I grew up in a small coastal town where my parents ran the local pharmacy. As a child, I was fascinated by how medicines could transform illness into health, but also terrified by the potential consequences when things went wrong. After losing a childhood friend to a medication error, I dedicated my life to creating safety systems that would prevent such tragedies. By 30, I had 3 advanced degrees and had written the definitive paper on biological containment failures. That paper caught the attention of the National Research Institute after their catastrophic lab breach. They hired me to rebuild their safety protocols from the ground up. For 12 years, I poured everything into my work. My marriage dissolved. You're married to your lab, Mirren, not to me. Holidays were spent perfecting containment strategies. Birthdays passed in clean rooms, testing barrier integrity. I missed my sister's wedding to testify before a congressional committee about laboratory safety standards. The sacrifice seemed worth it. The protocols I developed became the gold standard nationwide. Other research facilities adopted my methods. International organizations requested consultations. Last year, I received the Crystal Award for Excellence in Research Safety, the highest honor in my field. Then came the diagnosis: Stage 3 breast cancer, aggressive treatment plan, 6 weeks of radiation after surgery. Take all the time you need, Elias had assured me, squeezing my shoulder. Your job will be waiting. I believed him. I trusted him. Elias had been hired 6 months earlier to oversee environmental safety, a division separate from mine but with occasional overlap. He often asked questions about my work, expressing admiration for my thoroughness. Now I understood why. During my 6-week absence, Elias had systematically dismantled my department, absorbed my staff into his division, and, most egregiously, claimed my protocols as his own creation. He'd stripped away crucial safety redundancies to save money while maintaining the appearance of innovation. And tomorrow, he would present his protocols to the federal inspection team, securing his advancement while potentially compromising laboratory safety nationwide. Within 40 minutes of my call, 3 government SUVs pulled into the institute's parking lot. Undersecretary Winters emerged from the first vehicle, her tall figure commanding immediate attention from security personnel who rushed to intercept her. I watched from my car as she flashed her federal credentials. 2 more officials joined her, along with what appeared to be a team of auditors carrying tablets and briefcases. My phone buzzed with a text from Talia: "Come to the main conference room." By the time I arrived, the executive floor was in chaos. The institute director had been summoned. Department heads huddled in corners, whispering urgently. Elias stood by the presentation screen, his face ashen. "Dr. Ashcroft," Talia greeted me formally, though we'd known each other for years. "Please confirm if these are your original containment protocols." She gestured to a set of binders, my binders, that someone had apparently rescued from the trash. I nodded, throat tight. "And these?" She pointed to Elias's presentation on the screen. I examined the displayed diagrams. Those appear to be modified versions of my work, with several critical safety measures removed. Elias stepped forward. "I made improvements to outdated." "Improvements?" Talia cut him off. "You removed triple barrier containment requirements for level 3 pathogens. You eliminated mandatory waiting periods between sterilization cycles. You reduced air exchange requirements by 40%. The institute director paled. "I wasn't aware of these specific changes." "Of course you were," I said quietly. "I sent comprehensive warnings about these exact modifications last year when they were proposed as cost-cutting measures. I have the emails." All eyes turned to me. "You were very ill," the director stammered. "We thought perhaps you were confused." "Convenient," Talia remarked coldly. "Dr. Ashcroft develops cancer, so you decide her scientific judgment is compromised. Then you steal her work, gut the safety measures to save money, and present it as innovation." The weight of what they'd done, what they'd nearly gotten away with, settled over the room. By noon, the entire executive floor was in lockdown, Talia continued, addressing the group. "As of this moment, I'm initiating a facility-wide inspection. All certifications are under review. Research grants are temporarily frozen pending the outcome." Elias tried to interject, but she silenced him with a raised hand. "And most concerning," she added, We've discovered that critical safety protocols have been altered without proper testing or approval. This represents a potential public health emergency that requires immediate intervention. The color drained from every face in the room. A potential public health emergency meant federal oversight, media attention, and possible criminal charges if negligence was proven. I stood silently as the reality of what I'd set in motion washed over me. This wasn't just about my job anymore. It was about preventing another disaster, one that could have been far worse than the incident that claimed Talia's brother. As federal auditors spread throughout the building, confiscating records and interviewing staff, I felt a hand on my shoulder. "We need to talk," Talia said quietly, guiding me toward an empty office. What she told me next would change everything, not just for me, but for the entire institute. "What I'm about to tell you stays between us," Talia said, closing the door behind us. The empty office, sterile and impersonal, felt like a fitting backdrop for what I was about to hear. She took a deep breath. "The inspection tomorrow wasn't random. We've been investigating this institute for months." "What?" I sank into a chair, suddenly aware of how exhausted I truly was. 6 months ago, we received an anonymous tip about safety violations here. Nothing specific enough to warrant immediate action, but concerning. When I learned you were on medical leave, I became worried. Talia, perched on the edge of the desk. "You were our canary in the coal mine, Mirren. With you gone, I suspected they might try something. So you accelerated the inspection schedule." She nodded. "What I didn't anticipate was finding you here today, discovering they'd completely dismantled your department and stolen your work." My mind raced, connecting dots. The timing of my cancer diagnosis was convenient for them, wasn't it? They were already planning this. Talia's silence was confirmation enough. "There's more," she finally said. "We've found evidence suggesting the modifications to your protocols weren't just about cutting costs. Someone's been selling streamlined versions of containment systems to private laboratories, labs that wouldn't qualify for certification under your original standards. The implications hit me like a physical blow. They're monetizing watered-down safety protocols? That's beyond reckless." "It's criminal," Talia corrected, "and we need your help to prove it." For the first time since walking into my emptied office, I felt something other than devastation, a spark of purpose igniting in my chest. "What do you need me to do?" Talia outlined her plan. I would be reinstated as a special consultant to the investigation, given full access to all records and systems. Officially, the Institute would welcome my expertise in resolving the misunderstandings about protocol modifications. Unofficially, I would be gathering evidence against those responsible. "They'll be watching you closely," Talia warned. "They'll know you're angry about being pushed out. You'll need to convince them you're just grateful to have any position at all." "I can do that," I said, thinking of all the times I'd smiled through gritted teeth at budget meetings while administrators dismissed critical safety concerns as excessive caution. "One more thing," Talia added. "We believe someone very high up is involved. Be careful who you trust." The next morning, I arrived at the Institute wearing my most professional outfit, one that hid how much weight I'd lost during treatment. The radiation burns on my chest ached beneath my blouse, but I ignored the discomfort. I had a role to play. The Institute director, Ambrose, greeted me with forced warmth in the lobby. "Mirren, we're so pleased you're feeling well enough to assist during this misunderstanding." "Happy to help," I replied, matching his false enthusiasm. "I'm sure we can sort everything out quickly." "Absolutely," he agreed, guiding me toward the elevator. "Just a communication breakdown during your absence. Nothing malicious." Behind him, I caught sight of Vega from HR watching us, her expression unreadable. Upstairs, the executive floor buzzed with nervous energy. Federal auditors occupied the main conference room, calling in department heads one by one. Staff whispered in corners, speculation running wild. Elias was nowhere to be seen. "Where's my temporary workspace?" I asked Ambrose. His smile tightened. "We thought you might be most comfortable in your old office." "My emptied office?" I kept my tone light, curious. "Everything's been returned," he assured me quickly. "A complete misunderstanding about your return date." I nodded, as if I believed him. My office had indeed been hastily reassembled, but not correctly. Books stood on shelves in random order. Certificates hung crooked on walls. My desktop items had been arranged by someone who'd never seen my workspace before. Most tellingly, the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet, where I'd kept my most sensitive research notes, remained empty. I began my investigation quietly, requesting access to the safety protocol databases to help clarify any discrepancies. No one dared refuse me with federal auditors in the building. Each inquiry revealed more disturbing alterations to my work, not just cost-cutting measures, but systematic dismantling of critical safeguards. By day 3, I discovered something even more alarming. Accessing historical records, I found that someone had been retroactively modifying my original protocols in the main database, changing timestamps to make it appear that the watered-down versions had been my final recommendations all along. I took this evidence to Talia immediately. "They're trying to frame you," she concluded, examining my findings. "If these altered records stand, it would appear that you designed these inadequate protocols, making you liable for any resulting accidents, while they profit from selling the streamlined versions to private labs," I added, the full picture becoming clearer. "And I would have taken the fall if something went wrong. We need to identify who authorized these changes. The system logs should show who accessed these files. But when we checked, the access logs had been purged. Someone with administrator privileges had covered their tracks." That evening, as I prepared to leave, I found a note slipped under my office door. "Parking garage, level 3, 7 p.m. I hesitated, remembering Talia's warning about trust, but this might be my only chance to learn who was behind everything. The parking garage was dimly lit and eerily quiet when I arrived. I clutched my phone, Talia's number ready to dial. Footsteps echoed behind a concrete pillar, and I tensed. "Dr. Ashcroft." I turned to find Zane, one of the IT administrators, emerging from the shadows. His normally confident demeanor had been replaced by nervous vigilance. "I'm risking everything by talking to you," he said, voice low. "They'll know it was me if they check the security cameras." "Who's they?" "The executive committee. Not all of them. A core group led by Ambrose." Zane glanced around anxiously. "I was ordered to alter the timestamps on your protocols, and then delete the access logs. I kept backups." He handed me a small drive. "This proves who made the changes and when. They've been planning this for over a year, since before your diagnosis." I stared at him. "Why are you helping me?" "My sister works at Helix Labs, one of the private facilities that purchased the modified protocols. She noticed safety discrepancies and raised concerns. The next day, she was fired." His expression hardened. "These shortcuts could get people killed." As I took the drive, a car engine revved nearby. Headlights swept across us. "Go," Zane urged. "Different exits. They're watching." I hurried toward the stairs rather than the elevator. The drive clutched tightly in my hand. As I pushed through the stairwell door, I heard footsteps above me, descending rapidly. I froze, listening. Multiple people, coming down fast. I turned and pushed through the door to level 2, moving quickly between parked cars. The elevator dinged across the garage. More people arriving. They knew about the drive. I slipped between 2 large vehicles, crouching low, and called Talia. "Someone's after me in the parking garage," I whispered, when she answered. "I have evidence, but I'm trapped." "Security team is 3 minutes out," she replied. "Can you reach the main exit?" I peered between the cars. 2 men in dark suits were surveying the garage, speaking into radios. The exit was beyond them. "No," I breathed. "They're blocking it." "There's a service corridor on the south wall," Talia instructed. "Maintenance access. Head there. I'm sending the building schematics to your phone." Staying low, I moved between vehicles toward the south wall. My heart pounded so loudly I feared they might hear it. The radiation fatigue I'd been fighting all week threatened to overwhelm me, but adrenaline kept me moving. I found the service door partially hidden behind a concrete pillar, locked. My phone vibrated with a text from Talia, 2357#. I punched in the code. The door clicked open, revealing a narrow maintenance passage. I slipped inside, just as shouts erupted behind me. They'd spotted me. The corridor stretched ahead, dimly lit by emergency lights. I moved as quickly as my weakened body allowed, following the schematics on my phone. The passage would lead to the loading dock, where Talia's team would meet me. Behind me, the service door burst open. Footsteps thundered down the corridor. "Stop! Security!" I pushed harder, lungs burning. The drive clutched in my palm. The loading dock door appeared ahead, freedom just beyond. As I reached for the handle, a hand gripped my shoulder, spinning me around. "That's far enough, Dr. Ashcroft." Ambrose stood before me, flanked by two security guards and Vega from HR. His face, normally composed, twisted with barely controlled rage. "You've become quite troublesome for someone who should be focused on recovery," he said, extending his hand. "The drive, please." I backed against the door, the metal cold against my spine. "You altered my safety protocols. You endangered lives to save money." "I optimized outdated procedures," he countered smoothly. "Your methods were excessive, wasteful. The modified protocols meet minimum regulatory requirements. Minimum requirements aren't enough when lives are at stake." My voice echoed in the narrow space. "You were willing to risk another disaster, just like the one that killed those technicians." Something flickered in his eyes. "Accidents happen in research. Progress requires risk. Not that kind of risk. Never that kind." I gripped the drive tighter. "Why? Just to increase the profit margin?" Ambrose stepped closer. "The Institute was losing funding to private competitors with less restrictive safety overheads. We adapted. By stealing my work and corrupting it," I said, the full betrayal washing over me. "And when I got sick, you saw your opportunity." "The drive," he repeated, voice hardening. Now, behind him, the security guards shifted uncomfortably. Even Vega looked uncertain. "What happens when there's an outbreak because of your optimized protocols?" I asked, addressing everyone in the corridor. "When containment fails because you removed the triple barrier system? When people die because sterilization cycles were rushed?" One of the guards exchanged glances with his colleague. "That's enough," Ambrose snapped. He nodded to the guards. "Take it from her." As they moved toward me, the door behind me burst open. Federal agents flooded into the corridor, weapons drawn. Federal agents, everyone down on the ground. Chaos erupted. The security guards immediately surrendered, dropping to their knees with hands raised. Vega backed against the wall, eyes wide with shock. Ambrose lunged toward me in desperation, reaching for the drive. An agent tackled him mid-movement, driving him to the floor. Talia appeared through the doorway, surveying the scene with grim satisfaction. "Perfect timing," I said, legs finally giving way as I slid down the wall to sit on the floor. She knelt beside me. "You okay?" I handed her the drive. "Better than okay. We got them." But as federal agents secured the scene, reading rights and applying handcuffs, I realized something didn't add up. The elaborate scheme, the systematic dismantling of safety protocols, the attempt to frame me, it felt bigger than cost-cutting measures or competitive advantage. Something else was going on, something we hadn't uncovered yet, and somehow I knew Ambrose wasn't the mastermind behind it all. The investigation expanded rapidly in the days that followed. Federal agents combed through the Institute's records, interviewed staff, and seized computers. Ambrose, Elias, and 3 board members were placed on administrative leave pending criminal charges. Vega cooperated immediately, trading information for leniency. The drive Zane provided contained more than just proof of the altered protocols. It revealed a tangled web of corruption reaching beyond the Institute's walls. The modified safety procedures weren't just being sold to private labs. They were part of a coordinated effort to weaken biosafety regulations nationwide. They called it Efficiency Initiative, Talia explained as we reviewed the evidence in a secure room at the federal building. A lobbying push to reduce what they termed excessive containment requirements across all research facilities. I studied the documents spread before us. "Who benefits from weaker safety standards?" "Follow the money," she replied, sliding a financial report toward me. "These modified protocols reduced operational costs by 30%. For large-scale bioresearch, that translates to millions annually." The report listed 12 major research entities that had expressed interest in adopting the streamlined protocols, including government contractors handling defense-related biological research. One name at the bottom of the page caught my attention: Harlow Biosciences, the largest private research conglomerate in the country, headed by Warren Harlow. Warren Harlow, who also chaired our institute's board of directors. Warren Harlow, who had personally recruited Ambrose as institute director 2 years ago. Warren Harlow, who had visited me in the hospital after my diagnosis, expressing such sincere concern about my recovery. "Talia," I said slowly, "we need to look at the board of directors more closely." The investigation into Harlow revealed a disturbing pattern. His conglomerate had been quietly acquiring smaller research facilities for years, implementing cost-saving measures that often compromised safety. 3 separate incidents had occurred at Harlow-owned labs in the past 5 years, all quietly settled out of court. records sealed. But he needed more. To truly maximize profits, he needed to change the regulations themselves. And to do that, he needed credibility from a respected institution, our institute. He needed your protocols, Talia concluded as we pieced it together. Your work is considered the gold standard. If he could revise your methods and present them as equally effective but more efficient, he could push for regulatory change. And when I refused to compromise on safety standards last year, they waited for an opportunity to sideline you. Talia's expression darkened. Your cancer diagnosis wasn't just convenient, it was perfect timing. A chill ran through me. You think they knew before I did? Your annual medical exams are part of your employment records. Vega admitted they review those closely for high-level staff. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd imagined. While I was fighting for my life, they were methodically dismantling my life's work. But we faced a significant challenge, proving Harlow's direct involvement. As board chair, he maintained plausible deniability, with Ambrose and others serving as buffers between him and the daily operations. We need more, I admitted, frustration mounting. The evidence connects everything to Ambrose, not Harlow. Talia nodded grimly. Harlow's too careful. He's built his empire on using others as shields. That night, lying awake in my apartment, an idea took root. Harlow had one vulnerability, his reputation as a visionary in biological research. His personal brand was built on being perceived as an innovator pushing boundaries while maintaining uncompromising standards. What if we used that against him? The next morning, I presented my plan to Talia. It was risky, potentially career-ending if it failed, but it might be our only chance to expose the true mastermind. You want to offer yourself as bait, Talia said when I finished explaining. I want to give Harlow exactly what he wants, me discredited and my protocols undermined, but on my terms. After hours of discussion, she reluctantly agreed. We would proceed with extreme caution, building in safeguards to protect me if things went sideways. First, we carefully crafted a narrative. Federal investigators had found inconsistencies in my original research, minor but concerning errors that called into question the necessity of certain safety measures I'd established. Under scrutiny, I was reevaluating my previous stance on containment protocols. We leaked this information through carefully chosen channels, knowing it would reach Harlow quickly. Then we waited. 3 days later, I received a text message from an unknown number. Breakfast tomorrow? The Grove, 8 a.m. WH. Phase 1 complete. The Grove was an exclusive restaurant catering to the city's elite. I arrived at 7:45, wearing a wireless microphone developed by Talia's technical team, undetectable by standard security scans. Federal agents positioned themselves throughout the restaurant as staff and patrons. Warren Harlow arrived precisely at 8, impeccably dressed and radiating confident authority. At 62, he maintained the vitality of a much younger man, a walking advertisement for the anti-aging research his companies conducted. Mirren, he greeted me warmly, taking my hands in his. You look well. I've been so concerned. Thank you for checking on me in the hospital, I replied, the words bitter on my tongue. That meant a lot. Of course. We're family at the Institute. He gestured for me to sit. I was disturbed to hear about the recent unpleasantness. Ambrose's behavior was inexcusable. I played my part, appearing vulnerable and uncertain. Everything's happened so quickly. The federal investigation, the questions about my protocols. Harlow leaned forward, voice lowering conspiratorially. Between us, I've had concerns about the sustainability of your containment standards for some time. Really? I kept my expression neutral. Brilliant work, obviously, he assured me. Revolutionary, but perhaps overly cautious in today's research environment. The standards were developed in response to the Meridian disaster, I reminded him. 3 people died. A tragedy, he agreed solemnly, but one that occurred under outdated systems. Your improvements prevent similar failures. Certainly, but some elements may be redundant, costly without adding substantial protection. He was testing the waters, seeing if I was truly wavering. I gave him what he wanted, uncertainty. The investigation has raised questions I hadn't considered, I admitted, looking down at my coffee. Some of my insistence on triple barriers might have been emotional response rather than scientific necessity. Harlow's eyes gleamed. Perfectly understandable given the circumstances under which you developed the protocols. Trauma can lead to overcompensation. Over the next hour, he skillfully maneuvered the conversation, positioning himself as my ally against overzealous federal investigators. He suggested forming a joint committee to refine containment standards, with me as the public face, lending my credibility to the revised protocols. Think of the advancement we could unlock, he urged, painting a vision of scientific progress unburdened by excessive safety measures. Your name would be associated with both the original standards and their evolution, a complete legacy. What about Ambrose? I asked. And Elias? Harlow waved dismissively. Unfortunate casualties. They implemented changes without proper process. Our approach would be methodical, defensible. As breakfast concluded, Harlow made his offer. A position as Chief Safety Innovation Officer at Harlow Biosciences, double my previous salary, and prominent credit on all revised standards. Sleep on it, he said, signing the check. We could change the future of biological research together. I promised to consider it, and we parted ways. Him confident he'd won, me knowing we'd captured every word. But the recording alone wasn't enough. We needed him to explicitly acknowledge knowing about the illegal modifications. For Phase 2, I needed to push harder. 2 days later, I requested another meeting, this time at his office. I've reviewed your offer, I told him, sitting across from his expansive desk with its view of the city skyline. But before I accept, I need to understand exactly what happened with my protocols while I was gone. Harlow studied me carefully. How much do you know? I know Ambrose authorized changes that removed critical safety elements. I know Elias implemented them. What I don't know is who originated the concept. His expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Does it matter? We're discussing moving forward, not looking backward. It matters to me, I insisted. I need to know if this was Ambrose acting alone or part of a broader strategy. Harlow considered me for a long moment, then came to a decision. The efficiency initiative was my brainchild, he admitted, rising to pour himself a drink. 3 years in development. We identified key containment protocols that could be modified without catastrophic risk. Without catastrophic risk, I repeated, meaning some increased risk was acceptable. Calculated risk, he corrected smoothly. All research involves balancing safety against progress. Your standards, while admirable, tilted too far toward caution. So, you instructed Ambrose to implement these changes while I was undergoing cancer treatment? I kept my voice steady despite the rage burning inside me. Harlow sipped his drink. The timing was opportune. Yes, you were. Inflexible on certain points. We needed to demonstrate the viability of modified protocols without constant resistance. They stole my research. They scrubbed my name from my life's work. An unfortunate overstep, he conceded. Ambrose misunderstood my intentions. I wanted your work modified, not erased. Your name lends credibility we need. And there it was, the admission we needed, captured by the recording device hidden in my watch. He had knowingly authorized the illegal modification of established safety protocols, putting countless lives at risk for profit. But I wasn't finished. One last question, I said, reaching into my bag. Did you know about my cancer before I did? Harlow froze momentarily, then recovered. What do you mean? I removed a folder and placed it on his desk. My medical records from 6 months ago. My blood work showed early indicators that were flagged for follow-up. That follow-up was delayed by 2 months, long enough for the cancer to advance to stage 3. I've always wondered why. His face remained impassive, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. According to Vega from HR, you personally review medical reports for key personnel. You would have seen these results before I did. That's absurd, he dismissed. Why would I delay your diagnosis? Because you needed time, I said quietly. Time to position Elias, to prepare Ambrose, to set everything in motion before I became too ill to fight back. You can't prove that. I smiled then, the first genuine smile I'd managed in his presence. Actually, I can. Vega kept her own records, including your directives regarding my medical information. I stood, gathering my things. Federal agents are currently searching your home and office with warrants based on the evidence we've already collected. I imagine they'll find more. The color drained from his face as realization dawned. This entire conversation, said, has been recorded? Yes. I moved toward the door. Just like our breakfast meeting. As if on cue, the door opened. Talia entered, followed by federal agents. Warren Harlow, she began formally. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, reckless endangerment, and corporate espionage. I watched as they led him away, his empire crumbling around him. The man who had seen my illness as an opportunity, who had tried to erase me and corrupt my life's work, reduced to just another white-collar criminal being processed through the system. 1 month later, I stood before a congressional committee, testifying about the systematic attempt to undermine biological safety standards. My protocols were reinstated nationwide, with additional provisions to prevent similar exploitation in the future. The legislation strengthening research safety regulations was named the Meridian Act, honoring the technicians who died in the original disaster, including Talia's brother. As for me, I accepted a position as Federal Director of Biological Safety Standards, with authority to inspect any research facility in the country without notice. When Harlow's trial concluded with a 30-year sentence, reporters asked if I felt vindicated. This was never about revenge, I told them truthfully. It was about protecting people from those who value profit over human life. But watching him being led away in handcuffs, knowing he would spend the remainder of his life in prison while my protocols saved countless others, that felt like justice. Thank you so much for staying with me through this story. If you found it compelling, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more stories of justice served. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever stood up against a powerful figure who tried to erase your contributions? Your support helps more stories like this reach others who need to hear them. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most powerful weapon against corruption is simply refusing to be erased.